This is really, really, really wild stuff, man. I still cannot believe what we've been watching for these past 15 days or so in New York City. I mean, Michael Cohen's testimony wrapped up yesterday. And essentially, when you take it all in the aggregate and just take Donald Trump out of it, if you're a Trump deranged lunatic and you're watching this, just take this trip with me, man. Take Donald Trump out of it. And here's what you have. You have a guy, he's an attorney, and he gave some really, really bad legal advice to a client. And he made some really pretty questionable moves while acting on behalf of the client. And now you have that same attorney, already a convicted liar, testifying in court that it was the client who was responsible for his actions that he already admits taking. And this isn't just some bad defense in this guy's own trial. No, he is the state's star witness against his own client. And honestly, you gotta realize, you gotta agree that if this case did not involve Donald Trump, you'd be absolutely losing your mind with disbelief. None of this stuff makes sense, but this is what we have. This is who these people are. This is what they think justice actually looks like. And I mean, it's beyond words, man. It's remarkable stuff. Jonathan Turley, very, very smart guy. He sat in the courtroom today or yesterday, and he had some really, really pretty interesting takeaways.
Well, this has been rather otherworldly to sit and watch this. It's like you've entered a parallel universe. I mean, how this case is going forward, I just cannot explain. You had a disbarred, convicted serial perjurer on the stand, matter-of-factly detailing how he stole tens of thousands of dollars from his client. And what is really funny is then the prosecutor gets up and says, I just want you to tell the jury, once again, you're not charged with anything, right? And I wanted to stand up and say, yeah, but you should have. He just admitted that he committed grand larceny. He told you that, and you instead decided he was more valuable to pursue a dead misdemeanor on a bookkeeping violation.
So, New York state law, statute of limitations on larceny, I believe, is 5 years. So Cohen said that knowing that the statute's already run and that he probably would not be charged by Bragg. But should Bragg, at the very least, look into this, Jonathan?
Well, that's the question. Is he's been under investigation for many, many years. So when he admitted to it doesn't really mean the fact that they couldn't have determined this. But the interesting thing about Cohen is how really blasé this all is. Yeah, I stole money from my client. I lied repeatedly. I violated all of these oaths. And people are just sort of nodding, and you feel like you're the only one in the room saying, this is not normal. Okay, this is not how trials are supposed to go. But the prosecutor then got up to try to resuscitate him and pound on his chest and, get his heart going again. And it made it even worse, because much of what the prosecutor talked about really didn't change the thrust of his arguments.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this is a shiny object that is being used to distract the jury from the fact that they have glaring problems. They had witnesses that said, look, we listed this as a legal expense because we paid it to a lawyer. You have the key role of Weisselberg, who's sitting 15 minutes from here, who was the one who said, yeah, why don't we treat this as a retainer? Which probably made sense to him because Cohen should have had a retainer, but he was a really bad lawyer. And so, like many things, he didn't do that. But now the prosecutors are using his failure as a basis to convict his client, and then he's adding to that and saying, I think you should send my client to jail for following my legal advice.
Think about that for a second, man. Michael Cohen, he really is the mastermind of all this stuff. It was his operation, his contacts, his money. And of course, the average leftist, they'll say, why would he spend his own money? And to me, it looks pretty simple. It's just a regular investment. It's just an investment. He thought if he laid out 130 grand, he'd be able to find a way to turn it into 3 or 4 times that, which he did, while also stealing some more off the top, right? And that's the kind of person this is. And that is the state star witness. They've already arrested Weisselberg for perjury, which, is nothing compared to the crimes that Cohen has already been absolved of, but they won't call him. The state won't call the guy that actually paid Michael Cohen. And you got to ask yourself why. And I think here's what'll be interesting to watch. If the defense calls him, which I can't imagine why they wouldn't, the prosecution is going to paint him as a perjurer. The same people who pretend Michael Cohen is some sort of truth-telling hero of democracy are going to say this guy's a perjurer.
Based on everything you've just said, Jonathan, is it safe to assume you're in the camp of the former president not testifying or taking the stand himself?
No, he can't testify, but that door was closed by Judge Merchan. Judge Merchan granted such a broad scope for cross-examination, no lawyer would let a client get on the stand with the order of Judge Merchan. And I have to say, I was really struck today by what I consider to be fairly one-sided rulings. He hammered the defense, sustaining a lot of objections, some of which I still don't understand the basis for his order, and he was far more solicitous towards the prosecution. But the biggest problem that we saw today is one of the reversible issues. Once again, he allowed the prosecutors and Cohen to talk about how there are campaign violations in the case. And there are no campaign violations. And so after this happened again, he gave this instruction saying, disregard that on the merits. Well, they're not going to disregard that on the merits. They're hearing it over and again. So he says you can't have an expert on that issue. But Michael Cohen here is to lay out the federal election law, because that's practically what's going to happen.
I think that's actually a really, really good thing for the defense, man. After reading every word of all this testimony, I cannot honestly imagine anyone anywhere would make a decision of any kind based on anything that Michael Cohen offered. And he's absolutely right, man, about the judge and his sided, one-sided rulings.